In this video, when I use the term extrovert, I refer to the Jungian understanding of the extroverted type rather than the conventional use of the term. For an explanation of introverted and extroverted types, please see my previous video. Here's a quick recap of the understanding of extroversion we came to in that video. For an extrovert, the external objective world determines what's interesting and energizing, thought, felt, sensed and intuited, decided and acted upon, more so than the internal subjective world on the whole. To put it more simply, an extrovert is more influenced by the external objective world than by their subjective one. As Jung says, if a man thinks, feels, acts and actually lives in a way that is directly correlated with the objective conditions and their demands, he is extroverted. An extrovert is oriented to and oriented by the objective world. Facts and information about the external world are important and interesting to them, in part because that's what they use to navigate life. The external world gives an extrovert direction. While Jung acknowledges the need for the extroverted attitude, he also acknowledges its limitations. Although it is true that everyone orients himself in accordance with the data supplied by the outside world, we see every day that the data in themselves are only relatively decisive. To illustrate this point, let's take an example where two extroverts are considering a walk in the rain. The first one points to objective factors in favor of the walk, such as the health benefits, the availability of shelter along the way, the convenience store they could visit, and so on. The other points to objective factors suggesting against the walk, such as the increased chances of slipping, of being splashed by traffic, and so on. Because the objective data is only relatively decisive, the data by itself doesn't point to only one option. The objective data can be used to point in favor of going for a walk and against it. The external world in itself doesn't tell us what to do or think or feel. A subjective factor is always necessary to arrive at one particular choice, to say, this is what I want. Every thought, action and feeling involves both subjective and objective factors. All an extrovert does is habitually favor objective factors over subjective ones. To go back to our previous example, introverted subjective factors will still be at play in the two extroverts. Factors such as whether they like the rain, whether they like walking, whether they like who they're walking with, and so on. Moreover, it's the difference in subjective factors between the extroverts that accounts for the different objective factors they consider. In the earlier example, it's obvious that one just liked walking in the rain and the other didn't, even though they both focus on objective rather than subjective reasons. While all individuals are affected by objective and subjective factors simultaneously, the extrovert will be more conscious of and affected by objective factors than subjective ones. Like Jung says, the extrovert's inner life is subordinated to external necessity, though not without a struggle, but it is the objective determinant that wins in the end. Jung describes several ways the extrovert may be affected by objective determinants. First, he recognizes how the extrovert's nature is to adjust to what's external. As Jung writes, he owes his normality on the one hand to his ability to fit into existing conditions with comparative ease. Behavior we might call flexible or adaptable is due to an attitude that prioritizes external needs, a fundamentally extroverted one. Second, the extrovert adjusts to the moral norms of society. If society and an extrovert's environment is to change, then the extrovert will be inclined to change with it. Third, the extrovert follows what is pragmatic, or what is evidently possible given external circumstances. As Jung says, the extrovert would focus on the career that holds out good prospects at this particular moment. He does what is needed of him, or what is expected of him. Fourth, an extrovert tends to overlook their psyche and body due to absorption in the external world. Jung says, this is just his weak point, for the tendency of his type is so outer-directed that even the most obvious of all subjective facts, the condition of his own body, receives scant attention. In summary, an extrovert adjusts to their surroundings, adjusts to the norms of society, and adjusts to what is pragmatic and realistic given the external world. In other words, an extrovert adjusts for the sake of the object at the expense of the subject. All of this adjustment can result in disharmony and neglect of the psyche, and even the body. The reason for this neglect is because the introverted attitude, which attends to the psyche, hasn't been paid attention. It's been repressed. And what's repressed from consciousness lives on in the unconscious, which seeks compensation for the subjective factor. That is, on all those needs and demands that are stifled or repressed by the conscious attitude. This results in a markedly egocentric tendency in the unconscious of the extrovert. Moreover, these impulses, thoughts, wishes, affects, needs, feelings, take on a regressive character according to the degree of repression. The less they are acknowledged, the more infantile and archaic they become. As an example, take a case of someone who is very self-sacrificial. They consistently put their self at expense for others' convenience. Consciously, they believe the best thing they can do in life is support others. Unconsciously, they neglect their need for others to support them. Later in life, they become afflicted by health and nervous conditions that require others to support them. They even regress to a state of childlike dependency. This can be understood as a form of unconscious psychic compensation, as an example of how a repressed, introverted need and attitude can find expression in an extrovert. As always, Jung's work pushes us to self-reflection, to ask, how is my relation to objects in the external world? Am I sacrificing an introverted attitude for an extroverted one? What objects, what things about the external world cause me to repress introverted need? And moreover, what are those needs that require consciousness? If you enjoyed this video and would like me to take more walks through Jung's work, a like or comment is much appreciated. Thank you.